The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Stephen, ever since that time we clicked go live and it blew up the internet, I always get worried when it clocks a little longer. We actually had a time, Christine, where it just died.
Oh, yeah, we had that major Google outage and everything just went wonky. We're like, what's going on? Well, welcome back to the Bliss Business Podcast, the show where we explore empathy, connection, and purpose and how they transform business from the inside out. I'm Stephen, joined by my co-host Tullio and our special guest. But first, a stat. According to TalentSmart, 90% of top performers score high in emotional intelligence, yet only 36% of people can accurately identify their emotions as they happen. And at the same time, we have AI right now reshaping industries, amplifying the importance of human-centered skills like empathy, judgment, and ethics. So today we're exploring how emotional intelligence and AI intersect and how this dynamic will shape the future of leadership, culture, and work itself. Tullio, please introduce our guest today.
Absolutely. Very excited to have Christine Heckart today, who's the CEO and founder of Xapa. It's a company helping people live and work in alignment with who they truly are. Love that, by the way, Christine. Christine's a seasoned Silicon Valley executive, having led roles at Microsoft, Juniper Networks, NetApp, and Cisco. She's also an investor, board member, and an advocate for emotional intelligence as a critical business driver. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you both very much.
So to start us off, tell us a little bit about Xapa and how your work blends emotional intelligence and preparing organizations for the AI era. I know this is a topic of interest for you. Please tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you for the opportunity to do that. Xapa means joy in Greek. Now, you told me in Sicilian it means something else like working the land or a tool. So I love that. I'm going to consider that because Xapa is about building skills.
It's actually a verb, zappare, which means to work the land.
Interesting. Okay. So we do, we make you work in Xapa, but you're not working the land, you're working yourself and you're building up your own skill. But like with Bliss, the Bliss Network is about love at scale. And Xapa is about joy at scale. And by joy, we don't mean like superficial happiness. We mean the deep, intrinsic, long-lasting joy that comes when we are self-aware and we have self-esteem and we have enough of our own innate confidence and skill that we're able to then help others and make the world better. And Xapa is about trying to figure out how to do that at scale and how to help people really build those human skills.
I love it. So you've led in some of the most performance-driven environments in tech. Where did your understanding of emotional intelligence begin, and how does that intersect with your perspective on AI?
I don't know exactly when I became aware of what emotional intelligence even is. It's not like it was a word when I was growing up in the Eastern Plains of Colorado, like we weren't, working the farm and talking about emotional intelligence. When I hit the workforce, I feel like in some ways I had a lot very naturally, and in other ways I was really lacking. But when I became aware of its importance from a leadership point of view, was in leading transformational change. And when you're at tech companies or really any company, as a leader, you're constantly being asked to lead change. And any transformational change, AI is probably the mother of all transformational changes. So we're in a moment. But I was there in the internet years, like that was a moment. The financial crisis was a moment. COVID was a moment. Like as leaders, you're always introducing new innovations or you're having these black swan events. And very rarely is change that you're trying to drive really about the technology. even AI, I will absolutely argue, the hard part about moving into an AI-driven world or organization is not the technology. It's the people transformation. It's getting people to think differently and use a different mindset and lean into different skills. Now, hopefully lean into more purposeful work as well. But it's, when you're trying to drive transformational change, it's ultimately about the people. It's not about the tools and technology. And the people, it's all about them. We can use the word EQ, fine, but it's really a very broad definition of EQ, which is how do we build the resilience and the human skills necessary to be successful through change and on the other side of change.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. When we optimize AI in like the marketing side of things, we've been doing that for like 10 years, right? Using AI. If you have a wrong goal in AI, it's just going to still relentlessly optimize toward that, single-mindedly. And so this is one of the things that kind of worried me when seeing this, the latest moment we're having arise is, hey, if it's going to be single-mindedly optimizing toward profit, it's not going to care about the planet. It's not going to care about people, or any kind of higher purpose. And really, I think that's kind of where some of these products and things that were being developed now, where I really hope we start seeing more and more of things that are prompting us to be better humans, and in turn, helping AI in these foundational stages. What are your thoughts about that? Tullio, you're about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say to Christine's point, I think a lot of companies are actually discovering that, in fact, 70% of these AI initiatives are being abandoned because most organizations are discovering they're not ready organizationally, structured wise. They're not ready for it because it thrives in autonomous environments. It thrives in decentralized environments. And a lot of companies are discovering that they're operating in archaic models that are not actually empowering, that are not creating the kind of models that AI could thrive in. And discovering that the real problem is not the technology. It's actually, you have to first empower the people and create an environment where people can thrive. And AI becomes a living organism that supports that. And it's fascinating how not unready many organizations are for this. And to your point, it's not a technology initiative. It is an organizational change. It's a fundamental shift on how organizations need to work. And to a certain degree, I believe AI is forcing organizations to rethink how people work, not just what they do. And emotional intelligence becomes a competitive advantage in an AI-driven future. Are you seeing examples of this?
Oh my gosh, you guys brought up so many things. There's like 5 awesome topics in one there. I want to talk about all of them. I just did a keynote in Dublin, Ireland at the Dublin Tech Summit, and it's called The Changing Why of Work. And, the reason why people work today is really around personal growth, and they want to lean more into meaning and purpose. And I do agree with both of you that done well, AI should give the humans a chance to jettison the more repetitious work and lean more into work that has real impact and real value and purpose, to your point, Stephen. So then the question is, how do we help the people through their own mindset shift and build their own skills and resilience, because the jobs themselves are changing. Like, I believe we fundamentally have to rethink, reinvent, and reimagine work, because it's not about a butt in a seat, from 9 to 5. Those people, a lot of CEOs like, okay, we got to get everybody back into the office. That's great. I'm not saying one thing or another about that. You decide what's right for your company. But what a butt in a seat isn't work. Work is about output. It's about impact. And companies have a hard time even defining, let alone measuring all of that. And we need the people doing what the machines can't do, but we also need the people able to manage the machines. So if you're right out of college now, you're a manager. You have to, what does that mean? You have to understand the business context that you're in. You have to be able to prioritize what's important now. You have to be able to provide context and problem definition so that the machine can solve the right problem, answer it in the right way. And then if you're using generative, like if you can automate a particular task with an agent, fantastic. I have lots of agents automating specific tasks in my little company right now. But if what you're doing is collaborating with the AI, which it's also very good at, it will give you infinite number of choices, all of which seem equally good. It's up to the human to decide, to choose, to manage. And ultimately, the humans are the only ones that the court recognizes as responsible for the output. So the humans have to bring the ethics, the judgment, and the final review and approval of the output, the quality. In fact, there's somebody who should probably be on your show is Dominique Shelton-Leipzig at Global Data Innovations. And she's got a fabulous framework for AI governance called the Trust Framework. And it's all about the role that the humans have to play as we automate and scale AI towards whatever purpose, whether it's profit or purpose, or hopefully the combination of the two, and do that in a responsible way. So we could go on forever just on the topics that you raised, but I'll pause for a moment.
No, yeah, I love that. So, and the concept of we're coming into the workforce as managers, right out of college. How can companies teach employees to kind of strengthen those skills that AI can't really replicate, like, judgment and ethical decision making? AI is very persuasive. It is very persuasive, and people think of it as an authority when it speaks for whatever reason. And it's just, how do we help build those skills?
So I was just in Napa for a board meeting last week for my SciTime board, and George Lee at Goldman Sachs came and presented, and he is responsible for their AI practice. And he talked about revenge of the liberal arts. And I think that is what's happening right now is liberal arts, unlike STEM, liberal arts teaches people how to think, how to be curious, how to explore, how to bring different ideas and concepts together in new ways, how to have good judgment, how to have good ethics. These are the skills that we now have to instill in our humans. And as companies, we're investing a lot of time, money, and energy into training the agents, training the AI. If we invest just a tiny fraction of that amount in training the humans, we will have good outcomes. If we don't have humans to oversee the agents and the AI, we will have very terrible outcomes, and outcomes that can go wrong very quickly, because these are generative systems and they do hallucinate and they do require oversight. And it's oversight by people who can bring in judgment, ethics, curiosity, people who are able to ask the right question. I mean, all of prompt engineering right now is really about your ability to frame up the problem in a way that the generative system can respond to and provide enough context and framework so that the response you get is helpful to the situation. And then ultimately, you have to make judgment. And, for all of us who are collaborating every day with these systems, we know that they are equally helpful and not helpful. In fact, just very recently, Meter produced a report, and this was specific to generative AI in coding. And they took very experienced coders. We often say that AI in the hands of somebody unexperienced is just baloney at scale. Like they don't know right from wrong. And so, you just get a lot of mediocrity at scale. But in the hands of somebody who's really skilled, AI is a very powerful tool. So they gave it to incredibly skilled engineers. And they ran a blind test. So as scientifically valid as they could make it, where they had to decide before they knew if they were going to use AI or not, how long it would take them. And then for that particular problem, they either got to use AI or they didn't. And then they looked at how long it took for them to code towards that problem. And the seasoned engineers used to working with AI every day estimated that AI would save them 20% of time on average through the test. And in fact, using AI cost them an additional 19% more time. Yeah. So it's, it really does take a lot of human judgment and interaction to use these tools in an effective way. And just because they feel magical doesn't necessarily mean we're getting the outcomes that we want. So we really do have to invest in the humans and their skills, their judgment skills, their framing skills, et cetera, as we're also investing in making these models smarter.
So much to unpack there. I mean, what you said is so powerful in terms of why some of these projects are failing, because most organizations are not empowering people to act as leaders. And you need to be a leader to use AI. You have to be able to use discernment. You have to have emotional intelligence. You have to have ethics. And if you're not being empowered to act as a leader, then it's not going to work because it's too dependent on just a few people. So what message would you give CEOs that are challenged with balancing AI adoption with the requirement of creating more empowerment? Because what I'm hearing is you have to empower people, and that requires training and upskilling in order for them to make effective use of this technology, this tool, to either level up and produce better results. But ultimately, they have to act as a leader, not just a rank, an employee, so to speak.
Right.
What
so
about
I'll just
struggling with this?
Let me lean into a couple pieces of Xapa philosophy and then try to answer that question. So one of the things that Xapa believes is anybody can be a leader. Leader is not a level. It's about how you show up, your ability to influence, the energy and ethics that you bring into the room. Leadership is not a position. It's a practice. We're all getting better all the time. And if you're a good leader, you're constantly adapting to the situation. So what we want to do is we want to teach people how to lead. Now, you said empowerment, and I do 100% agree with you that as companies, we have to create cultures of empowerment and accountability. One of the things that Xapa teaches about empowerment is I can create environments where people are more willing to use their intrinsic power, but ultimately, empowerment comes from within. I have to choose, I have to make the choice to activate my own inherent power. And no amount of me empowering you can force you to have the courage and have the desire to use your power. You have to, as individuals, we each have to make that choice. So I really empower myself. And if you're a good leader, if I'm in a good company and there is a culture of empowerment, it makes it easier and safer for me to courageously lean into that power. But the flip side of empowerment is accountability. Accountability is the cornerstone. So I can be empowering myself all day long. If I'm not willing to be accountable for outcomes and willing to be accountable for my mistakes and willing to learn as part of that accountability process from what's working and what's not working, no amount of empowerment really creates the outcome that I want. And so, the way we deal with all of this in Xapa is we actually have programs to teach people cognitively but also help them practice and build their muscle, because that's all it is. It's muscle. You just have to do it over and over. It doesn't have to be a big, heavy weight. You just have to be repeating the motion over and over. And eventually, you'll build up muscle. And it works the same way with any of these human, esoteric, EQ-oriented skills. We get people into the process of practicing, and they can build up that muscle so that they learn how to empower themselves. They learn how to be accountable, not just for their successes, but also for their failures and their mistakes, that they're able to influence others around them and be a model for all of these critical skills. And that's one thing, that we find in organizations is it only takes a few sparks, and that mindset can really spread. And it works the other way as well. You get people who are not accountable, who are blaming, who are hiding, who don't have courage, who don't bring ethics. And that can also ripple very quickly. So as leaders, I think, especially right now in AI, we have to scale these skills. You can use a tool like Xapa. You can use something else. You can do it in person if you can figure out how to make that scale. But if we don't invest in our humans, our companies, doesn't matter how much AI we throw at it, our companies are not going to get the outcomes that we are expecting through all of this investment.
Yeah, I love what you said about accountability. It's actually the tenets of self-managed organizations. Whether you get a lot of freedom, but it comes with 100% accountability. You can't have that kind of freedom without fully being accountable to the success of the company, yours and your peers. So
yes.
So
and good. I would just add very quickly. So the modern Maslow's hierarchy is something called Kaufman's model of human potential. And he uses a boat metaphor, and it's really valid right now with AI. So, AI is rocking everybody's boats. There's a lot of uncertainty. And then you put the macroeconomic stressors and the geopolitical environment, and it's like our boats are rocking. The waves are high. So how do we help people not only stabilize the boat, but also move forward? And the way you stabilize is with that psychological safety. But the wind in people's sails, the top, and he doesn't use Maslow's pyramid, which I don't think Maslow ever intended as a pyramid anyway, but he uses this boat metaphor. And there's sort of a little pyramid at the top for the sail, and then there's the boat ballast underneath. And so you get that psychological safety to steady the boat in the waters. But the things that moves people forward is actually growth. It's purpose, what you guys were talking about earlier. It's the chance to learn something new. And transformational change gives people, especially with AI, like we all have an opportunity to learn new things. I think it's super fun. Like every day I'm playing with AI in new ways and I'm learning new skills. But we have to be safe enough, secure enough in our jobs, trusting enough of our environments and our companies that we're willing to lean into those skills. If we feel afraid, like AI is going to take my job, and that's a bad thing, we're not willing to move forward. But what if AI taking your job is absolutely the best thing to ever happen to your career? Because you're getting rid of the redundant, rote, tactical work, and you're able to lean more into purpose, into your values at work, into the ability to create new innovation and better impact in your company. Well, that's great that AI took your job because you just got a better job.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, we've got a couple audience questions
here. We've got three of them. Let's see.
Got three. Oh man! All right.
This is one that's very aligned with all of them are greatly aligned. But let's go with this one first.
All right. So, what mindset shifts are required for leaders to move from AI as a threat to AI as a collaborator?
Fabulous question. Mm-hmm. So, we created this program called AI Resilience. And, resilience itself has a number of components. It's about bouncing forward from adversity or setbacks or leaning with curiosity into changes. It's about imagining a future. So being to step to the unknown, but you're able to step into the unknown in part because you can imagine a better future on the other side. And so you can step in with curiosity. It involves managing our saboteurs, that, those voices in our heads that are saying why it's going to be scary or what we can't do. And if we build up people's resilience skills, and growth mindset, curiosity, the ability to bounce forward from a setback, if we give them those skills, they're able to manage themselves through the change, or as a leader, we can help them manage through that change. And one of the things that I think all leaders have to be doing right now, and all humans have to be doing, is we have to answer the question, what's in it for me on the other side of this change? Because if I can't answer that question, and by the way, this is true for any and all transformational change, not just AI. People will only lean into the transformational change and make it through that messy middle, the valley of dramatic tensions when they don't know what to do and their stress is high and we're not to the other side yet, but we've already started the change. So we've gone into the plunge. What gets them to the other side is that there's something compelling in it for them personally. Not my company's going to make more money or my department's going to be more efficient, but I am going to learn something. My job's going to be better. And if we can get them leaning into that, they're willing to go through that messy middle. A lot of times what they're learning is these new skills. Like, I'm learning how to manage through transformational change, and I'm learning to reinvent myself, and I'm learning how to think more critically or ask better questions, because that's what's going to make me more successful on the other side. Did I answer the question, or did I?
No, I think it's about AI as a threat versus a collaboration. I always think of AI as like this, the description I like is this jazz session you're having a lot of times.
Right.
Where you don't know where it's going to go sometimes, but you're both co-creating, and it can be this beautiful thing if you're, going with the flow and understanding your part in this process and its part and what you bring to it. It's, I know people are scared of it, and it's hard to embrace the unknown.
Well, it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. As companies, if we want people leaning into this, there has to be trust that I have a job on the other side of this. The job may be different. Personally, I don't know of any company in the world, big or small, that has enough resource. Like, the number one constraint inside companies is always resource. So there should be plenty of room for the humans and the agents, because the agents can take all the rote tactical stuff, and now the humans can do different work that really needs to be done, and that propels the company forward. So if we can create that environment of trust and the accountability of learning from mistakes, not covering them up. So one of the things we teach at Xapa is own your red. Whatever went wrong, identify it and own it before somebody else points it out. So say, hey, these 3 things went right, and I learned, from those right things. And this went really wrong. I didn't do it well. It didn't turn out the way we thought. Here's what we learned. Now we're going to try again. If we can get people from a resilience point of view, leaning in, having curiosity, being willing to experiment, we can give them the space for that learning, we will get phenomenal outcomes on the other side. But it's not a straight line. And, to your opening statistics, a lot of these programs are not going to go forward. Does that make them a failure? Only if we don't learn and create a better program on the back end of that. It makes it an absolute failure if all we do is just walk away and say, oh, it didn't work the first time, and therefore I'm unwilling to try again, because you'll just get left behind.
You touched on one of the questions here. I think going back to accountability, what's your perspective on vulnerability and leadership, especially when it comes to owning mistakes in front of a team? So you talked about accountability and owning the mistakes, but what about owning them in front of the team, creating vulnerability or psychological safety, as I often refer to it, at least?
Yes, absolutely essential, as you know. So Xapa teaches a framework on trust that has sort of 6 elements. The highest element says trust is situational. The bottom element says trust is based on vulnerability. So you have these two kind of it's situational. It's not a moral judgment. You can trust me for many things. You cannot trust me to keep my own calendar. You cannot trust me to get behind the cockpit of a plane and fly you to New York because I don't have a pilot's license. I can be trusted for many things. I cannot be trusted for many things. That's okay. We can all be trusted and not trusted for certain things. It's situational. Trust requires vulnerability. If I'm not willing to be vulnerable, there is no trust because there's nothing that I'm willing to give up and put at risk in my relationship with you. But then there's 4 elements. There's affinity. We're on the same side. We've got the same goals. I understand you. I see you. I get you. There's integrity, not moral judgment. I do what I say. I can be trusted. If I say I'm going to do something, I actually do that thing. My actions and words are in alignment. In other words, I don't say, oh, that was fantastic. I loved your podcast. And then turn around and say, oh, she really screwed that up. It was awful. That is not integrity. But if I say to you, man, I didn't think you did a good job, that's integrity. My words and my actions are in alignment. I'm being authentic. Reliability and competence. As a leader, I have to own all of those. And if back to the accountability, trust, screw up, if I say, look, I had a hypothesis, I thought this thing would work. And here's what we learned. These parts of it didn't work. I was completely wrong about X. I think I might have been wrong about right about this other thing, but we won't know yet until we try again. Or I thought I had the competency to do this, and I've realized that I don't have that competency. I'm going to need help. I need your help, or we're going to have to get outside help. When you can bring it in a analytical way, using like this trust framework, it makes it easier for the leader to own their mistake, their vulnerability. I had a situation with my own team a couple of weeks ago where I was bringing in an outside person to do some work. And my head writer, who's fantastic, she knows all of these, she's like, wait a minute, you brought them in without telling us? I thought I owned that. She called me on it right in staff meeting, which is fantastic. And I said to her, you're right. Like, you do own that. I didn't even think about that, but I'm in alignment with my integrity over here, because here's the lens. I was like, I own, I think this is my fault. I created this problem, so I'm trying to solve it. But in her mind, it was her accountability. We could use the framework right then to kind of unravel what had happened. Affinity stayed really high because we could both see each other's point of view. So yeah, leaders have to be super transparent about this, but that goes back to kind of the definition of joy. Am I self-aware enough? Am I self-confident enough? Do I have the self-esteem and the safety? I'm CEO of the company, so it's a safe environment for me. The fact that she was willing to call me on it tells me it's a safe environment for her. Yeah. That's what we need.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in that vulnerability too, because you're modeling being human, and just saying we're all going to make mistakes, but how we rally around them and support each other is what makes this phenomenal as a team. Right. We have a lot of audience questions. We're probably not going to get to all of them. Forgive us in the interest of time. And we have one more that I think we can cover here on YouTube from Bayani Hayag. How can employees at lower middle position approach upper management to advocate for adopting AI tools, especially when leadership might be hesitant or unfamiliar? Very good question.
That is such a fantastic question. And, I think I don't want to be flippant here. I want to be really thoughtful, because there are plenty of companies who ban AI. They're so afraid. They, like you say, it's a step into the unknown. They don't want the risk associated, and they ban it. So let's assume you're not in one of those companies. Then a great way to lean into this is to use it yourself. Like, you yourself really learn. Now, how do you do that in a way that doesn't put your company at risk? The primary way you do that is that you spend a tiny amount of money to put yourself in a private instance, not a public instance. So I'll use OpenAI ChatGPT as an example, but it could be Google Gemini, it could be Perplexity, Claude, whatever you want. So say I'm in OpenAI ChatGPT. For $20 a month, I can get a private instance. And oh, by the way, I can share this with my whole team. We can all use one $20 a month license. Everything we put in there is private to our company. It doesn't get shared with the outside world. Already, I'm bringing the risk way, way down. If you're not able to do the $20 a month, there are things you can do to hide. Instead of calling your product a router, you can say it's an Apple and try to kind of confuse the outside world. But in general, you want to have this private environment. Start experimenting. You can create a digital twin for yourself. Train it in how you think. Ask it to then take your idea and tell you the 5 things that are wrong with your idea. Ask it to build out a potential how-to guide for something or a maturity model or whatever your company's working on. Collaborate with it and then show your manager what you were able to do and how it's better, or what you're able to automate with an individual agent. By you experimenting, building up your own skill, having a few use cases, and then sharing that, you create curiosity. People are going to start leaning in with curiosity based on your experience. Every one of my employees right now, they have to work in the private instances, but they are encouraged to spend some of their time every day experimenting. What we want to then learn is what didn't work and why, because you learn a lot about what not to do or why something didn't work, and what is working. And then how can we take what is working, create an agent, and then give the agent that repeatable work, but also have somebody who's responsible for continual oversight.
Wonderful. Christine, let's shift a little bit towards your work and yourself. Studies have shown that purpose-driven companies are 30% more innovative and attract 40% more talent. There was a study done by PwC in 2024. What is the deeper purpose that guides your work, and how you do, and how you see emotional intelligence and AI coming together to support that purpose?
Xapa has a really clear purpose statement, and it is 100% why every employee is at this company. We want to help every human on the planet become the best version of themselves, personally and professionally. And I do agree that purpose is more important than anything else. I think we saw that through COVID, both during the transition and then even post, that people are willing to work for less if they are highly aligned with a purpose that they believe in. And so I would say all of our employees, we're a tiny company. We're incredibly purpose-driven, and every single employee is critical, knows they are critical in helping us with our mission. And they also know that their ideas, their innovations, their ability to either do their job during a day or fall short, that's going to have a real impact on us as an organization. So they each feel important. I hope they feel highly empowered, but very driven by the ultimate purpose, which is to help humanity.
Beautiful. One of the things I talk about a lot with our sort of bliss philosophy is that it's a way to leave a legacy. You're building love into a system or something. You can step away and you've left your mark, right? What kind of legacy do you hope to leave behind?
I started Xapa as a legacy play. So I've been in tech over 30 years, usually deep tech, data analytics and routing and storage. I wanted this to be an example of how technology could play a very positive role in people's lives. And and be able to do that at scale. We're starting with companies to help them, kind of transition in this AI moment and grow the people who are growing their business. But ultimately, we want it to go to all people and to help every person get intrinsic joy, be the best version of themselves.
I love it. So, question I ask every guest on the show is some form of this. What role do you think love plays in business?
I have always loved my work. I say I did this, I do a keynote called The Changing Why of Work. And the very first slide is me at 2 years old at Christmas time. And there's all these toys around me. There's dolls, sort of abandoned. And there's a little pony in the back, a rocking pony. And I'm on the phone. My mouth is like wide open. And like I'm working on Christmas Day at 2. That is freaking me.
You hit the ground running. You hit the ground running. And
I got deals to make.
Yeah, exactly. If you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life, as they say. So to me, it is about love. But if you look, so Dr. John Levy, who's a behavioral psychologist, has done a study on why people work. And in my generation, Gen X, we were expected to love work. In fact, we loved work so much that we put it above our own health and our families and our kids. And our kids have seen that. So they don't buy into the love work in the same way that we do. But what they want to do, the reason why they work is they want to grow. They want to become the best version of themselves. So maybe it's a little more self-love now. But regardless, what work can do for all of us is those skills, that self-esteem, the wind in our sails. That's all personal growth. And so to me, there's no distinction between love, work, best self, personal growth. They should all be happening at the same time. And if you're in an environment where that's not happening, it's the wrong fit for you. It's the wrong job. It's the wrong culture. It's the wrong company. Because when you have that fit, you will love your work. You will love yourself. You will be growing and ultimately building your own human potential, which is what it's all about.
Amazing. Everyone wants to be becoming. Christine, it's been great to have you. It's such a rich conversation, thoughtful, insightful conversation. How can people get to know you and get to know your company? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
If you go to Xapa.com, Xapa.com, our website, you can do the contact me. There's a real person behind that. If you want to get to me, I'm on LinkedIn, Christine Heckart at LinkedIn. I'm happy to link in with you. And yes, if this is something you're interested in, I want to have a conversation.
Thank you for coming on the show today, Christine, and thanks to all of our listeners for joining us today. If this episode inspired you to lead with greater empathy, awareness, and purpose, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.